Hi, welcome to Chapter 12, The Strategy of International Business. So far in this class, we've been looking at the larger environment in which international businesses compete, taking into effect economic indicators, economic conditions, the environment for political, economic, cultural differences found in nations across the globe. Uh, We've been looking at international trade, investment framework, international monetary systems, but now we're going to shift the focus away from the environment of international business in the world to the firm itself and how a firm competes within the international business. So, what does a firm do strategically to make sure that they increase shareholders' wealth in an international business community? So we're going to look at how firms can increase their profitability, expand their operations into foreign markets and international marketplaces, discuss different strategies a firm can pursue when competing internationally, the pros and cons of these strategies, various factors that affect a firm's chances to be successful international. We're going to talk about benefits and costs and risks and strategic alliances. you know so there's a lot to discuss, and this is more, we're focusing more on the company rather than the total big picture of the whole world. um, so this should be an exciting track. Now let's just kind of discuss um, strategy. So strategies means a lot of things, but basically specific actions a company takes to get to their goal of profit maximization. So these strategies typically focus on profitability, profit growth. So profitability is the return that the investors are going to get from the capital they put into the company. So if you buy stock in a company, it's measured the return that you get for that. Profit growth, the percentage in net profits growth over time. So, a company may start out at a profit level of 20% in net profit, and we want to see that grow to 25, 30. So companies consistently are looked to or judged on the amount they can increase sales and the amount that they can increase profit margins. And strategy is supposed to help in both of those areas. And we can measure profitability in a number of ways, but generally it's defined as the rate of return that the firm makes on its invested capital. And sometimes we call this ROIC, return on invested capital. And we take this net profits and we simply just divide it by total invested capital. So this is a very important aspect of how a company does business. Now, value creation, if a company can make a product more valuable to the consumer, then they can, in a sense, make more profits. So how do you make a product more valuable for the consumer? Well, you take a vacuum cleaner and you say, okay, what is one aspect of this vacuum cleaner that consumers don't like so much? They don't like the fact that they have to constantly be buying vacuum cleaner bags, and then when they can't find any vacuum cleaner bags because they discontinued, they have to buy a new vacuum. Okay, so let's redesign the vacuum to make it not have to use a bag, make it bagless. What else do customers don't like? Well, customers don't like how vacuums lose suction over time. Okay, well, let's redesign the mechanics of the vacuum so that um, the suction, you never lose suction, and the suction is very strong. And what you have one of these Dyson vacuum cleaners, which came on the market a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And Dyson made the first bagless vacuum cleaner, and with with a new suction anti-loss technology, and created extreme amount of value for his vacuum cleaners that he designed. And when he went to Hoover's to try to sell it to Hoover's, they didn't want anything to do with it because they're like printer companies. They make most of their money in the accessories or the bags they sell, so they didn't want to ruin their bag business by selling bagless vacuums. And many years later, the president of Hoover's said that was the biggest mistake he ever made. He should have bought the patents and the rights to the Dyson vacuum cleaner and then just never made it because um, Dyson became so successful with it that Hoover's lost a lot more money than they would have if they would have bought the technology, employed it, or bought the technology and buried it. Um, so anyway, Dyson created a huge amount of value for the customers. That's why those vacuums go for $500, $600 when they were first released, because consumers saw such a value in them, they're willing to pay that much more money for them. How much would you pay for a printer that never needed to have the ink recharged? Maybe all you had to do, it just never needed ink. You buy it once and it lasts forever. Would you pay $500 for a printer like that? Maybe. I might consider it. I mean, you pay, $70 for a printer, and then you're paying $30 for ink cartridges every 6 months. After a number of years, you're getting close to the $500 mark. Anyway, so companies that by creating value for the consumer, they're able to create more interest and more demand for their products, and then they could hopefully raise prices to do that. And hopefully at the same time, they're able to create a product that has more value and may actually cost less. So companies can create value with two basic strategies: differentiation and low costs, which we'll talk more about soon. All right. So here, let's look at this. Here's a graphic on value creation. So the way to increase the profitability of a firm is to create more value. The amount of value a firm creates is measured by the difference between its costs of production and the value that consumers perceive in its products. In general, the more value customers place on a firm's products, the higher the price the firm can charge for those products. However, the price the firm charges for goods or services is typically less than the value placed on the goods or service by the customer. This is because the customer captures some of that value in the form of what economists call consumer surplus. And the consumer is able to do this because the firm is competing with other firms for the customer's business, so that the firm must charge a lower price than it could if it was a monopoly, which generally it's not. Also, normally impossible to segment the market to such a degree that a firm can charge each customer a price that reflects the individual assessment of the value of the product. So anyway, I mean, in this chart, we can see that we have right here the enterprise valuation, profitability, profit growth. Now, profit growth is going to generate from entering new markets and selling more in existing markets. So we can grow total profits by selling more, and we can increase the profitability by reducing costs and raising prices. So if you took my class, Strategic Management, in summer one, we talked a lot about this, and when students email me about the simulation, I'm not doing well in the simulation, what do I need to do in the simulation? My general answer was reduce costs, increase price, because that will increase profitability, and also increase sales. So if you can increase sales, reduce costs, and increase prices, your company is going to make a lot of profits. And we saw directly in that simulation how when students did that, their scores of their performance of the simulation went up dramatically. Okay. All right. So let's talk about strategic positioning. Now, it's important for a firm to be explicit about its choice of strategic emphasis with regard to value creation, or what we call differentiation, or maybe low-cost strategies. To configure its internal operations to support, the strategic emphasis that it chooses. We do have a. There is something called when we look at the way, a company has to take a position in the market. They could be a company that's very high end, so they may have a high value to their product, like a Dyson vacuum cleaner, and a high cost. it could be a high-end automobile, high-end appliance, and you know that they're significantly more expensive, but you get a lot more value for what you're buying. If you take a barbecue grill and you buy the $200 barbecue grill from Lowe's, that will last about 3 years before it rusts out and you have to throw it away. If you spend a bit more money and buy a Weber grill, they're constructed of stainless steel and different components where that grill will last 15, 20 years. So, but you're paying a lot more for it. So there are, a different structure of where people want to compete compared to high cost, low cost, and high value, low value. I mean, you could be low cost and low value and still be a successful company, or you could be high cost and high value to be a successful company. But you can't be high cost and low value and think you're going to be successful. You just really have to give consumers something for their money, otherwise they're not going to buy it. Now, if you're familiar with the efficient frontier, this is a scale that looks at what companies are the most efficient on two sets of inputs, and we can look at cost and we can look at value. So those positions the firm can adopt regarding the value added or the cost of the product. So assuming internal operations are configured efficiently to support either decision or position they want to take, as you move along the axis, the efficient frontier or the edge of the frontier is going to denote the firms that are the most efficient in the value that they offer compared to the costs. Now, if companies aren't efficient, they're going to fall behind the efficient frontier bit line if they don't have significant value for the cost that they charge. And you can see this, I think the book talks about the hotel industry, and it looks at, high value 5-star hotels compared to 3 and 2-star hotels. And if you go into a 2-star hotel, you're getting a lower cost, but you're getting less quality. If you've ever been in a 5-star hotel, you know that you're paying probably 5 times the amount in some cases, and you're getting hopefully 5 times the value. Facilities, cleanliness, modernness of the rooms, amenities, things of that nature, position of where the hotel is located. So these are all different things that people. A lot of strategy goes into building a hotel and kind of setting it up where you want to set it up. Okay, so let's look at the value chain of a firm. A value chain is part of the operations of a firm, and can be thought of as sort of a system or a process composed of a series of distinct value creation activities, including production, marketing, sales, materials management, human resources, research development, information systems, things we're all familiar with if we worked at a company. So, these categories can have the possibility of creating value. So operations as a primary activity is very important to a business for actually achieving a strategy. So if a firm is to implement a strategy efficiently, it has to position itself on that efficient frontier line where they're efficient in their costs and the values that they give to the consumer. That's works along with their strategy. So if we talk about the primary activities, so some of the primary activities have to do with design, creation, and delivery of the product. It's marketing, it's support, it's afterlife services. Following normal practice in the value chain illustrated in the slide you're looking at right now, the primary activities are divided into 4 functions: research development, production, marketing, sales, and customer service. So research development is concerned with the design of products and production processes. So you basically want to develop and design a product that customers will want, but also design a product that you can actually manufacture. And manufacture with what you currently have or with what you currently can obtain to actually manufacture it. Although we think of R&D as being associated with design of physical products and production processes in manufacturing enterprises, many service companies also do a lot of research development. If you look at banks, insurance company, financial products, online banking, they do a lot of different innovation and development. If you think of the online banking, kind of look at Chase. They pioneered the depositing checks from your smartphone, transferring money between two different people, between two different bank accounts through a smartphone, the development of an ATM machine that can deposit checks, deposit cash, do all sorts of transactions. I wouldn't be surprised if it come out with an ATM that you can actually apply for a loan or for a mortgage. So the more efficient and the more innovation that Chase puts into their banking, the more value they're creating for the consumers. And along the way, like the ATM is a great example of an innovation. Okay, Chase didn't design the ATM, but they utilize it. But the ATM is a way of enhancing value for customers, 24-hour access to money and deposits, and at lower cost because there are no physical people working, earning money. The machine, basically, once you buy it, there's no salary to pay. So the research development is primarily there to create value. Production is concerned with the creation of goods or service. So production is going to actually make the products. Now, for physical products, when we talk about production, we generally mean manufacturing. So we talk about the production. We could look at automobiles and the simulation that we ran in the strategy class. If you haven't taken MBA 512, which is strategic management, I teach it usually every summer and winter online. It's a great class because we run a simulation that does a lot of what we talk about in strategy through the simulation. And the simulation has to be focused on running an automobile company. So it's a very interesting thing to talk about, to look at. I mean, for example, if you take any of the big car companies, Toyota, Honda, GM, Lincoln, Ford, they all have a luxury division. And generally what they do with the luxury division is they have a base model, say, Honda, Toyota, GM, Ford, they have base models that they sell through their regular divisions. Then they have a luxury division, which is basically they take an existing design or existing car. Say like Ford may take the Ford Expedition and turn it into a Lincoln Navigator. Honda may take the Accord and take it in and create a luxury class Acura out of it. Toyota may take the basis of a Toyota and use that to create a Lexus. So with some fairly minor feature changes, different grills, different stylings, some some additional luxury features, maybe $2,000 to $3,000 worth of changes to these vehicles at the base level, they can create a luxury vehicle and maybe sell it for anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 more per car. And that's a way of creating value for the customer. Enough value and prestige in the luxury class car that they could sell it for a very high price, much higher price. So, and this is all done through the marketing of the cars to show the consumers why there's a bigger value at a Acura, Lincoln, Lexus, and they create this perceived value through advertising that makes you feel like it's really worth that extra money. But the manufacturers are making out because they're only putting a couple of grand extra into these cars to create $10,000 or $15,000 worth of consumer perceived value. So luxury divisions are where most of the profits are at, for these companies. For example, Honda makes a lot more profits from their Acura sales than they do from the Honda sales. I mean, a Honda Acura doesn't really produce that much profits. It's selling at $25,000, but a $50,000, $45,000 Acura that may only be $8,000 or $5,000 to $8,000 more to make than, say, the Accord is netting them much more profits. So it's important to keep that in mind. I mean, if you look at, say, you look at TV networks, so they're not a manufacturer, but they're concerned with producing TV shows. So they're searching and need to do research development to develop the next level of shows, to create pilots and spend money hiring writers and actors to make potential TV shows. And if you get a show, say like The Walking Dead for AMC, now this show is so popular, it's making a huge amount of profits for AMC. It's getting higher ratings than most network TV shows, often placing in the top 10 of shows watched for that week. So very successful. But how did The Walking get so successful? Part of it is the marketing and sales function that a firm helps to create value in many different ways through brand positioning and advertising. The marketing function can create value that consumers perceive can be contained in the firm's product. So in the case of a luxury car, they have to advertise, what styling, what additional luxury features, what about this car makes it a luxury car. For a TV show, the network has to find a TV show that's going to test market well and be accepted well by the general population. And right now, I guess zombies seem to be very hot, so they hit a market that was not really being serviced too well in the television area, and they really developed one of the strongest cable shows in the last 10 years. Okay. So it creates favorable impressions of the firm's products in the minds of consumers, marketing and advertising. And they can increase the price that can be charged for the firm's products based on, remember that as consumers, we're brainwashed by advertising and marketing. These advertisements in movies, TV shows that we're hit with on a daily basis, they are meant to sort of a form of brainwashing to wear us down to really think that Coke is a better product than Pepsi, or Pepsi is a better product than Coke. To think that one car is better than another, a TV show you should be watching. They're basically dictating your life for you, what you should wear, where you should live, what your house should look like, what you should cook, what restaurants you should go to. You're being completely influenced and controlled by excessive, persuasive, and highly manipulative advertising to all in a sense to create awareness of their product and a sense of value of their product, so you're willing to spend the money to buy the product. And marketing sales can also create value by discovering consumer needs and communicating them back to the R&D function of a company, to say, design the product this way to match the needs of consumers. So again, and if you took my strategy class 512, we talk about blue ocean strategy, which really is the sense of this: what does the customer really need more of? What can they do with less of? And how can we make a more innovative, stand out from the pack or from the crowd type of product that's really going to be a better solution? And then, marketing can discover these in the marketing research, send it back to give this information back to research development, and they can make a better product that consumers will find more value in, and they will purchase. Okay, so let's move on to some of the support activities. So we talked about the primary activities. Now the support activities in this slide back here that we're talking about, the top part, this orange part here, support activities. We're talking about the primary activities before, but now we're going to talk about the support activities. So if we look at those support activities, so the value chain will give us inputs that allow the primary, support activities will give the primary, will provide inputs and information that allow the primary activities to occur. So in terms of attaining a competitive advantage, support activities can be as important, if not more important, than the primary activities of the firm. Consider information systems. These systems refer to electronic systems that manage inventories, tracking sales, pricing products, selling products, dealing with customer service, sort of like an SAP, an Oracle, a JD Edwards. So information systems, when coupled with communications features in the internet, can really alternate the effectiveness and the efficiency at which a firm's managers, how a firm manages its value chains and its activities. We've all heard of the classic example, the Dell example, where he had this just-in-time inventory and this order on the internet, and the automatically gets placed, the parts get delivered, it gets built within 24 hours and shipped out, all through his superior technology and information systems he put together and logistics to make this, be able to happen really quickly. So the logistics function controls the transmission of physical materials through a value chain, parts and such, from procurement through production into distribution. The efficiency which carries out can significantly reduce costs, because a lot of costs can be wasted in inefficient logistics. And that's why one thing Wall Balance is really great at is their logistics. So thereby creating more value and more profits for a company. So the combination of logistics and information systems, potentially a huge source of savings for enterprises. And if you look at something like, Walmart, their logistics and their computer system, you buy, Walmart sells a certain amount of products through their stores. The cash registers ring them up. The inventory is deducted, and electronically information is sent to the supplier or warehouse, and the next day the replacement inventory is delivered and put on the shelf. So they can, have a much more efficient store where they can keep a much smaller amount of inventory on hand at the store and just reorder more efficiently and more quickly, often taking a lot of the manual work out of it. So it's all real time, and they've been pioneering the use of RFID tags and barcodes and scanners and computer logistics and navigation and global positioning, all involved. Now, the human resource function is another area that can create value in a number of ways. And to ensure the company has a right mix of skilled people to perform its value creation activities very efficiently, the human resources function also ensures that people are adequately trained, motivated, and compensated to perform the value creation tasks that they're the expert in. In multinational enterprises, one of the things human resources can do to boost the competitive position of the firm is take advantage of its transnational reach to identify, recruit, and develop a host of skilled managers and employees, regardless of their nationality, who can be groomed to take on senior management positions, so they can find the very best in the world, not the very best in the state or the country, but the whole world. And you can see how this could really, if a company can really put together the best employees the world has to offer in areas of sales and research and marketing and manufacturing, and have a global reach and really just have the expertise, in the world expertise, you can see what a huge advantage that would give them. And human resources is the key to doing that. So the more effective your human resources department is, the more effective and efficient your employees can be in recruiting, retaining, improving what you currently have. So companies that are providing incentives, giving educational motivation for their employees to get educated, and it's all in the effort to increase the firm's value creation ability. And most firms will say their most valuable assets are their employees. And I tend to agree. Okay. The final support activity in a company's infrastructure, or the context within which all other value creation activities occur, the infrastructure includes the organizational structure, control systems, the culture of the firm, and this is a lot of this we talk about the culture of the firm in MBA 592, organizational behavior, which is another course I teach online that you may be interested in taking. The top management can exert considerable influence in shaping the aspects of the firm, and top management should also be viewed as part of the firm's infrastructure. So strong leadership, top management can control and shape the infrastructure of a firm through its performance of its value creation activities that we talked about. Now, let's talk a little bit about the organizational architecture and structure. Now, organizational architecture can be used to refer to the totality of the firm's organization, including formal organizational structure, control systems, incentives, organizational culture, processes, and people. Um, and this can be illustrated. We have, I have a slide on this. Here's sort of the organizational architecture. And this, again, we talk a little bit more about in the organizational behavior course. But this is basically, a way to organize, one way to organize a company. So, in the architecture. When we talk about organizational structure, what we mean here, three things. First, the formal division of the organization into subunits, such as product divisions, national operations, and functions. Most organizational charts display this aspect. Second, the location of decision-making responsibilities within the structure, centralized or decentralized. And third, the establishment of integrated mechanisms to coordinate the activities of subunits, including cross-functional teams or pan-regional committees. So let's talk about a few of these issues. Let's talk about controls. Controls are metrics used to measure the performance of subunits and make judgments about how well managers are running these subunits. Basically, that old saying, if you can measure it, you can manage it, and that's all about controls. Now, controls enable us to use incentives. And incentives are devices used to reward appropriate managerial behavior. Incentives are very closely tied to performance metrics. So if we can measure the amount of sales, the amount of profitability, we can provide incentives to employees to attain this. So we can encourage employees to sell more or to create more profits by giving them an incentive in pay or in time off or in flexible hours or many different ways. So usually linked to performance though. Bonuses are a big incentive. Annual rate increases or merit increases. If we talk about processes, are the manner in which decisions are made and work is performed within the organization. Examples of the processes for formulating strategy, for deciding how to allocate resources within a firm, or evaluating the performance of managers and giving feedback. Processes are conceptually distinct from the location of decision-making responsibilities within an organization, although both involve decisions. While the CEO might have ultimate responsibility for deciding the strategy of the firm, should be the process he or she uses to make the decision might include the solicitation of ideas and criticisms from lower level managers. So they have a process, basically the manner in which decisions are made and work performance within an organization. The work is performed. Organizational culture. This is the norms and value systems that are shared among employees in the organization. And again, MBA 592 organizational behavior talks a lot more about this. Just as societies have cultures, so do organizations. And organizations are societies, smaller micro societies of individuals who come together to make a business work. And they have their own distinct way and patterns of cultures and subcultures that exist within the organization that develop through time and through the people involved in the company. And cultural and organizational culture can have a profound impact on how the firm performs. So the more healthy the culture is, the more supportive the culture is, the more innovative the culture is, generally the better the firm will do. Now, these are all directly linked to people. And people, we not just employees, but also the strategy used to recruit, compensate, and retain the individuals and types of people they are, in terms of the skills, wages, and values and orientation for the company. So, people are really a strength. Here's we'll get to this chart in a minute. So people are really a strength for a company's performance. If you don't have the right people, your company can't be optimized and perform as efficiently as possible. So people are really the best asset for most companies. So, to obtain a superior performance and earn a high return on capital, high profits, the strategy must make sense given the market conditions. So, the operations of the firm must support the firm's strategy. The operational architecture must match the firm's operating and strategy. And the market conditions, if the market conditions shift, so the firm, so must the firm's strategy, operations, and organization. And if we look at basically the strategic fit, um, sort of this loop where we go from, you look at the organizational architecture, the operation strategy, and the strategy of the business. Operations in the organization need to support the strategy, and the strategy has to fit the market conditions, or it's not going to work. Um, let's see here. Okay, so that's the strategic fit. Um, so it just makes sense. The operations must be configured in a way that supports the strategy of the firm, and the organizational architecture of the firm must match the operations and strategy of the firm. In other words, the market conditions, strategy, operations, and organization all must be consistent with each other or fit each other for superior performance to be obtained. So this just makes, total kind of common business sense. So let's look at global expansion and profit growth. Um, so expanding globally allows firms to increase their profitability and rate of profit growth in ways not available to purely domestic companies. So firms that operate internationally, they're able to do what we call these four basic advantages. One, expand their market of their domestic products offerings by selling those products in international markets. So this one, they can greatly increase sales. Two, realize location economies by dispersing individual value creation activities to those around the globe where they can be performed most effectively and efficiently. Three, realize greater cost of, sorry about that. Cost economies from the experience effects by serving an expanded global market from central locations, thereby reducing costs of value creation. So, economy of scale, basically. Uh, Four, earning a greater return by leveraging any valuable skills developed in foreign operations and transferring them to entities within the firm's global network of operations. So your innovation can come from many sources internationally, and you're able to leverage that in all markets. So global expansion, it doesn't work for all companies all the time. As we learned earlier about Walmart in Germany, and some of the examples, international expansions have failed, and that's basically due to poor planning, poor strategy, poor strategic implementation. But where companies were able to successfully develop and integrate an international business, they've made huge profits and money. Um, Now, leveraging products and competencies. So a company can increase its growth rate by taking goods or services developed in the home market and selling them internationally. So you may have a home market where a particular product, maybe we're talking, you have a home market, I don't know how great this example is, but you have say a home market in Greece for Greek yogurt, and then which is in some cases people feel is a superior product to traditional American yogurt, and they move this Greek yogurt into expand to sell internationally, and they make huge profits, gobbling up 50% of the current yogurt market. Uh, that example is not the best, I understand, but anyway, almost all multinationals started out doing business this way, where they start out developing a lot of its best sellers in a local market. It could be United States, and many United States companies products first hit here in the United States and are expanded internationally. Uh, you know, for example, Microsoft developed its software. Um, Atari developed its games and consoles, and later were sold around the world. Um, you know, Sold to international markets. And same thing with automobiles are big with being developed in the core in one country and then internationally exported. When we talk about core competencies, which is a big term from MBA 512 strategic management, this refers to skills within the firm that competitors cannot easily match or imitate. And these skills may exist in any of the firm's value creation activities we talked about earlier: production, marketing, R&D, human resources, logistics, management, and so on. So such skills are typically expressed in product offerings that other firms find it difficult to match or imitate, such as the iPhone when it first came out, or the iPod. And core competencies, are really what makes the firm's competitive advantage, and they enable a firm to reduce the costs value creation and or create perceived value in such a way that premium prices are possible. So iPhone and Apple can make huge crazy profits because they sell their iPhones at huge markups because people find them so valuable they're willing to pay $750 for a phone. Now, you're saying I have an iPhone, I didn't pay that much money. Well, you have a contract with a cellular carrier, and part of that monthly fee you pay your phone bill for the 3-year contract or 2-year or 1-year contract is paying the company back for the money the company paid for the iPhone, which is hundreds of dollars. So you, in a sense, did pay $700 for your iPhone. It's just that you bought it locked with a contract, and they subsidizing it with your monthly bill. But the reason that you can pay so much for these phones is because of the extreme value they created them. Now, this value position was been eroded through Samsung phones and other phones copying, in some cases, improving the Apple's innovations, touchscreen technology, apps, and the such. But because of these core competencies, which are the source of competitive advantage for Apple, they were successful in the globally expanding the iPhone around the world. Uh, Leveraging and the success and the value created in American markets, and then selling them internationally around the world. And one way Apple is able to do that, have you ever noticed, every time you're watching a TV show or movie, your phone rings? Oh, well, wait, it's not your phone, it's the phone in the movie. How come everybody on TV and the movies has an Apple iPhone? Well, Apple pays a lot of money. Well, I don't think they actually, I'm not exactly sure. Apple works a little bit differently, but Apple does have a supportive program to get their products in movies. And it may be simple as shipping, free iPhones to a certain amount of people on the set, or somehow they get their products on these movies and TV shows, and most likely they pay to do that. I'm not exactly an expert of how Apple gets this done, but they're getting it done because everybody has this in movie and TV world. Just notice it next time you're watching a movie or TV that's recent. You know. Okay. Let's talk about location economies. Earlier lectures and earlier part of this class, um, we talked about how countries differ in a lot of different dimensions, including their economic, political, legal, and cultural structures. And we spent a lot of time talking about that, discussing it, um, having discussion post questions, and talking about these ideas and expressing them, and working on case studies about them. Um, and these are differences that can raise or lower costs in doing businesses in different countries. And the theory of international trade also teaches us that due to these differences in factor costs, certain countries have a comparative advantage in production for certain products. Germany might excel in making automobiles. United States might excel in computer software and pharmaceuticals, in biotechnology and financial services, and certain retailing. Um, while South Korea might um, excel in semiconductors, in other countries in apparel, in other countries in farming. A firm that is trying to survive the competitive global market, this has a big implication. The trade barriers and transportation costs permitting, a firm will benefit by basing each value creation activity it performs at the locations where economic, political, and cultural conditions, including relative factor costs, are most conducive to the performance of that activity. So if, for example, if outsourcing customer service is much more cost effective, in some cases more efficient, and even consumer relations effective by outsourcing it to the Philippines, then that would be a good thing for the company to do, because we're going to have a lower cost for customer service and maybe in some cases better service. And in some cases, these outsourced customer service were brought back domestically, because in some banking industries, they found that, gee, what? American customers don't like giving their bank account numbers and social security information to foreign customer service reps who have an accent they're not familiar with. Um, so firms that pursue a strategy that can realize, what we refer to as location economies, which are the economies that arise from performing a value creation activity adjusting the microphone here. In the optimal location, that the activity can have one or two effects. It can lower the cost, or it can help the firm achieve a lower cost position, enable it to differentiate its products from those of competitors. So there are a lot of examples of companies doing this and doing it quite successfully, where maybe we manufacture jeans and it's just too expensive to manufacture the jeans locally, so we're going to shift textile production to Vietnam, and now we can reduce the cost of our jeans and sell them for half the price and make more profits. So clearly, by a company having a good strategy of where to locate their research development, their manufacturing, their customer service, their marketing departments, not all in one building in one town, but moving that globally to where it's the best position to have things, a company's going to prosper and make more profits. It's common sense in today's world. Now, if we talk about the global web, this is the creation of value activities which different stages of the value chain are being dispersed to the locations around the globe, perceived to maximize where the cost of value creation can be as low as possible. So when we say a global web, we're talking about a global logistics, a global operation, where different stages can be performed where it's most cost effective. Now, there are political risks. Apple faced a lot of this when they took all their manufacturing, not all, most of the manufacturing jobs and moved them to China in a time where the country had a high unemployment rate. And a lot of people were saying, why don't you let Americans build the iPhones and the Apple products? And that's like a political risk that Apple at some point did bring some manufacturing jobs back to say, see, we know we're helping out. Okay, yeah, let's talk about the experience curve. Have you ever, the first time I built my own furniture from IKEA, I did a terrible job. The third time was better. The fourth time was perfect. The first time I installed a laminate floor, it was horrible. The second time I installed it, a lot better. Third, fourth time, perfect. So this learning curve refers to reduction in production costs that have been observed to occur over the life of a product. So you take something like the Xbox or the PlayStation 3. When they're first being produced and manufactured, they were very expensive for Sony and Microsoft to manufacture. As the years went on into the fifth and sixth year of production of these video game consoles, they got the cost down dramatically. So production costs decline by the amount of time that an experience they have in making it, and they in some points they can study what's costing them the most money, where is the most scrap or loss occurring, and they redesign the product and manufacture it in different ways until they it can improve. Um, so this is common sense, and this experience effect has many companies have looked at and utilized to make their production more effective. You know, just as you become better at doing something, the more experience you have with it, the less waste and mistakes and scrap. This extends to business as well. Um, Now, if we talk about learning effects, this refers to cost savings that come from by doing. Learning by doing. So, for example, if you're in class and I just say it's one of my finance classes and I'm just lecturing you on how to build a company's cash budget, that's not going to be as effective as if I give you the tools and have you construct the cash budget in class while following my instructions. So learning by doing is a lot more effective. You know, labor, for example, learns by repetition how to carry out a task, such as assembling, manufacturing televisions or VCRs or automobiles or what have you. Um, Productivity increases as that person learns to perform that particular task better. So learning by doing and improving upon that learning, helps to reduce costs. Um, and learning by actually doing something will be a far better teacher and a far more efficient teacher than um, learning by lecture in a case or a classroom. All right, so let's move on. Economies of scale. This is a common concept where basically the larger your production, the better ability you have to spread the fixed costs of the building or the factory over many of the products. So if the fixed cost of taxes and mortgage and everything that went into building your factory um, can be spread over a million units, say it's $1 a unit for a million units, or maybe you make 10 million units, so now this fixed cost is only 10 cents per unit, so now each product is 90 cents more profitable. So the ability to leverage an increased volume over the same cost basis or structure makes a company a lot more profitable. It can make when you in production, when you want to produce a lot of something, you get volume discounts. So if you're a manufacturer and you order chemicals or resources or inputs or supplies, they always have a quantity structure. The first 1,000 costs this. It's sort of like ordering business cards or pens. The first 1,000 costs this, and then the next 1,000 costs this. And if you order 10,000, it's half the price. So this is sort of the economy of scale effect. So a very, I think everybody's familiar with that. Now, leveraging subsidiary skills. To help increase a firm's value, managers definitely should recognize that valuable skills can be developed anywhere within the firm's global network, just not the top head honcho. So having an open structure where anybody can put in a recommendation or an idea is very important to leveraging, your people resources. Using an incentive system to encourage local employees to acquire new skills, such as tuition reimbursement, or encouraging your employees to go to seminars or learning annexes or communities. Develop a process to identify new skills have been created. So when a new skill has been created, a new technique, the company can actually identify it and roll it out to the entire company. Have a way of recognizing these valuable skills and an ability to transfer them throughout the firm. So a lot of companies, sometimes the egos of the people up top of the company get so big, they don't want to hear anything from anybody below them, any ideas or things they want to do. So a lot of these great ideas often get ignored when a company doesn't have this ability to leverage these skills. So it's very important that a company maintains a open and a communication structure where ideas and information can flow from the top to bottom, and there's someone there actually caring, listening, and judging whether or not they should do something with this information, rather than which most companies do, which you may have been a victim of, where it just gets ignored because people don't want to work or on your idea. They don't want to work on their ideas, even when your ideas are much better. All right, so to summarize, when a firm expands internationally, this gives them the ability to increase sales, increase profitability, and increase their profit growth. And they can do this by, of course, entering new markets, especially where there are no competition, realizing economies of scale and location economies, exploiting the experience curves of their manufacturing and their global manufacturing, and transferring any variable skills within the company, transferring them to the rest of the organization to really make a highly efficient and effective global enterprise. Okay. All right. Now let's look at a couple of pressures for within a company. Let's see here. Oops. Hold on a second. I just want to fix the alignment of the slide. There we go. Pressure for cost reductions and local responsiveness. Okay, so in competitive global markets, international businesses often face pressure, for cost reductions. Responding to the pressure for cost reductions requires a firm to try and lower the cost of its value creation. In manufacturing, they might try to mass produce a standard product at the optimal locations around the world where it may be, they can realize economies of scale and learning effects and location economies. So, you take a company that instead of making 50 different types of screws for their products, maybe they can narrow it down to 10 different types of screws. Rather than having simplifying and standardizing their products in a way that could reduce costs. So there is pressure for cost reduction, and can be very intense in companies with commodity-like products where the meaningful difference, there's no meaningful difference between products. So pricing of sale price is the big influence on the size of your market share, and it's difficult. To really find cost reductions in certain commodities. All right. Pressure for local responsiveness. Now, when we talk about this, can arise from national differences. So local responsiveness could be something like Kentucky Fried Chicken having to offer, different menu items in China than they do in the United States, or McDonald's having to offer different menu items in the Middle East or India, or Europe, to local tastes and local religious observances. So it could be just consumer tastes and preferences, or it could be business practices, distribution channels, and other such things that could call for a local response, not a global response. So let's see. Okay, so here are some influences on cost reductions, where major competitors are based in low-cost locations is a big one. Persistence of excess capacity. This is very big with memory chips, where consumers are powerful and face low switching costs, such as something as pens. It's a very low switching cost of switching between pens. A switching cost would be anything that you're afraid to change because it's going to take you a long time to learn the new system. So you like the idea of having an Apple computer, but you're afraid that the amount of time it would take you to learn how to switch from a Windows environment to an OIS environment, or the Mac. What I mean is the Apple operating system. I think they call it. I'm not sure, but they have a name for it. I think that was it. OSI, OIS. I'm not sure. But there's a switching cost. So there's pressure, you know, that creates extra cost. And we talked about local responsiveness. I'm just a little behind in the slides. So there are, of course, like I was talking about before, differences in consumer tastes, especially in food or clothing, that is going to affect, it's going to need a more local response and a local reaction. So you can't globalize and make one product for everybody in some cases. And, the infrastructure, there are certain trains can only go on certain tracks. So you can't make it one train for the whole world because different parts of the world have different sized tracks and different infrastructure, especially with boats and ports. And, so it takes a more regional response, not a global response. Same thing with distribution channels. They're different in different countries. And also government demands. If you're selling something like vitamins, different governments have different laws on, if your vitamins contain certain items like iron. Some countries outlaw no vitamin can contain any iron in them because of the potential harm to children. And, so it calls for more, regional response as far as, in nutritional information labels and things of that nature. If you ever go to a store and you buy some international food, you may find a sticker that they adhered to the product to meet United States local nutritional facts. And because the product's made for a different country that doesn't have the same laws, so their regional response was just to put a sticker on the bottle to meet the regional requirements. Okay. So choosing a strategy. What strategy should you use? We have to involve the pressure of cost reductions and the need for local responses, and this is going to influence your choice of strategy. But there are basically four global strategies: global standardization, localization, transnational, and international. And of course, why? We're going to talk about each of these in a minute, but why does global standardization strategy make sense? So we'll start off with global standardization. So if a company wants to pursue a global standardization strategy, the focus on increasing profitability and profit growth by reaping cost reductions that come from economies of scale. So think of it, one standard product you can make for the whole world. You can generate some huge economies of scale, generate a lot of learning effects and locational economies. That the strategic goal is to pursue a low-cost strategy on a global scale. So one product for the whole world, is this type of strategy. So not every product can do this, though, but some products can. So the production, marketing, research, development activities, the firm pursues a global standardization, which are concentrated in a few favorable locations. In the cell phone industry, they wanted to have a global standardization of the cell phone technology. And we had CDMA, and we had what was the other one? CDMA, which is the U.S. one from Qualcomm, and then we had another one from Europe that I think I forgot what the other one was called. But there's two standards that that compete, unfortunately. So that does prevent anybody from having a globalized standardization in that cell phone area. But the firm pursuing global standardization strategy, if they're pursuing the strategy, they try not to customize their products offering and marketing strategy to local conditions. They want, they want sort of the one couch to sell to the whole world, sort of like IKEA furniture. They make a set of furniture and they sell worldwide with no real big differences to gain a maximum economy of scale so they can produce low-cost furniture. And one of their big innovations was the fact that you make the furniture instead of them making it. They can really have a really condensed warehouse of of the furniture if it's folded on top and not assembled, and they can save all the manufacturing costs and of course shipping costs as well as far as size goes. So it makes sense when there's strong pressure for cost reductions and local demands for differences are minimal. Now you might have the localization strategy that we talked about, and this focuses on increasing profits by customizing your products to provide a good match for the tastes and preferences in the local market. So localization is appropriate when there are differences across nations and sometimes differences within a nation. For example, breakfast is very different in southern states than in northern states. So if you'll see that many northern restaurants for breakfast are not going to serve grits or biscuits with white gravy, things of this nature. So there's different tastes locally in the more northern states. Our breakfasts are more a bagel with cream cheese, eggs, pancakes, with eggs with hash browns, things of that nature. Where in the South they may prefer their eggs with grits. Or all right, so you get it. Local taste difference and preferences are different, but customizing the product offering to local demands, the firm can increase the value of its products to the local areas. So even though it may cost more to have this differentiation of this localized differences in how they make their products and the features their products have, and there may be some duplication of functions and in these smaller production runs for local tastes. They can recapture this by creating a large value for the customer by meeting their localized demands, and so their strategy can't be a global one. They're going to add value by really supporting the local customer demands. And in some products, that's demanded. You can't make one car for the whole world because some parts of the world they prefer cars with steering wheels on the left. In some parts of the country, prefer cars with steering wheels on the right. So, in the world. So, you get my idea here. There's also the transnational strategy. So global standardization strategy makes most sense when cost pressures are intense and demand for local responsiveness is low. On the other side of the coin, a localization strategy makes sense when demands for local responsiveness are high and costs, or pressures are moderate and low. And a good example of this also is the food industry. So what happens, however, when a firm simultaneously faces both strong cost pressures and strong local responsiveness? What does the manager do to balance the competing and inconsistent demands of these pressures in a firm? So what we call this, if they're trying to pursue an answer to this, we call it a transnational strategy. So a global environment with competitive conditions are so intense. In order to survive, firms must do all they can to respond to the pressures of local reductions, local responsiveness. And they must try to realize these location economies and experience effects to leverage products internationally and transfer core competencies and skills within the company, and try to simultaneously pay attention to the pressure for local responsiveness. So they basically, in transnational, they have to simultaneously try to be as global standard where they can in their products, and also adjust to local taste. So it's sort of a hybrid type of strategy. Okay. Now we also, let's see, there's also international strategy. Sometimes, I don't think I have a slide on this, but sometimes it's possible to identify multinational firms that find themselves in fortunate position of being confronted with the benefits of low cost pressure and low pressure for local responsiveness. So many of these enterprises can pursue international strategy, taking products from first produced in their domestic markets and selling them internationally with only minimal changes. And the distinguishing features of many such firms is that they're willing and they are selling the products that serve universal needs, but they do not face significant competitors. Um, so this is really an ideal situation that you want to be in. Not something that always not something that always occurs. Now, if we look at strategic alliances, what's a strategic alliance? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. Cooperation among different competitors, or different companies, and strategic alliances between firms in different countries. So you could have a company that dominates the internet, um, say the router business in the United States, and a company that dominates in China and Europe, and maybe they can make some strategic alliances to share technologies or sell each other's products where they don't meet a certain niche or technology through each other. So strategic alliances, they can ally themselves with potential competitors in various strategic purposes. Strategic alliances may facilitate entry into a foreign market. For example, many firms believe that if they are to successfully enter the Chinese market, they need to have a local partner who understands the business conditions and who has good connections. In 2004, Warner Brothers entered in a joint venture with two Chinese partners to produce and distribute films in China. As a foreign film company, Warner found that if it wanted to produce films on its own for the Chinese market, it had to go through a complex approval process for every film, and it had to farm out distribution to local companies anyway, which made doing business in China very difficult. Due to this, participation with Chinese firms, however, the joint venture firm that they created will go through a streamlined approval process, and the venture will be able to distribute films to producers much more easily. Um, Also, the joint venture will be able to produce films for the Chinese TV, something that foreign films are not allowed to do. So strategic alliances are a way to team up. Two companies can team up to get a better economic opportunity in between two countries. Uh, so you form strategic alliances when it's going to help lower your costs or risks of developing new products in new markets, bring together skills that you're lacking, like it may be you make a great product, but you have poor skills in distributing that product in a foreign company, so you could team up with a distributor um, as a strategic alliance to get your products sold in a foreign country more easily, and also help to transfer or establish technological standards in the industry to benefit both companies. So, you know, there are some disadvantages of the strategic alliances as well as, you could partner with a company and they could become your competitor, in a certain sense, once they learn your side of the business. Or they may purchase a competitor and then become a competitor directly with you. So there are some limitations, and they know a lot about you now because they were working with you. But if you get a good partner that helps you to achieve your strategic goals and has the capabilities to really expand your business, and they have the same vision for what the alliance is going to get, what they're both going to get out of the alliance, and they don't steal each other's technology or compete with each other in a way, and that really ruins a lot of strategic alliances. There have been many technology companies that had strategic alliances, but once they started becoming competitors, they broke off those strategic alliances. For example, Nintendo and Sony had strategic alliances until Sony decided to make the PlayStation, and Microsoft and Sony had strategic alliances until Microsoft decided to make the Xbox, and they became direct competitors. So you can see how that could happen. Okay, so that is it for this chapter, and that was just basically sort of an overview of strategy that hopefully that you have a good understanding from, say, a previous class like MBA 512 strategic management. So this is just basically applying that strategic framework or understanding over an international stage, and how strategy an international marketplace would look, and how it kind of special circumstances are created or developed when you're thinking about international strategy versus just plain old domestic strategy. So it's international strategy is based on the fundamentals of domestic strategy, but certain additional considerations for when you compete in an international market. Okay, that's it for chapter 12. I look forward to talking to you next time. Um, Thank you.